Okay, so for modeling, we need to first talk about the object data and the mesh data. And we need to think about these as being like two levels. So we have the higher level, which is the object level, the object data, and then a level down, we have the mesh level, that is to say the mesh data. And in the properties window, we can see these sort of separated into these two main tabs. So we've got the object tab and the object data tab. And since this is a mesh object, I'm going to refer to this as the mesh data tab to hopefully make it sound clearer. So an object is something that holds the 3D information like the location, rotation and scale, and it also holds relationships like whether it's a child or a parent of some other object. The mesh is something that contains the positions of all the vertices and where these connect up as edges and which of those are faces, and it also holds things like UV positions and vertex colors. So to tie this all together, the reason that I'm talking about this is because if we were to scale the cube on the y-axis to look quite flat, so let's just scale it right down along the y-axis by just left clicking and dragging on the value in the numerical field of the object tab. And then let's just put that right down to about 0.1. In fact, let's just type in 0.1. As far as the mesh is still thinking about things, so the mesh here, this still sort of considers itself a cube, even though we've sort of squished it down to be quite flat. And so the modeling operations are going to be being performed as though things are like a cube. Let's try and illustrate this a little bit more. So I'm going to take this plane down here and let's now switch into edit mode, and so now that's going to give us access to our vertices, edges and faces. Now I did that by just using the pull down menu, but there's another common way of doing that, which is with just using the tab shortcut key, so we can tab and toggle between object mode and edit mode on any object. So I'm going to make sure that I'm in edit mode this time and then press S and then Y, and then we scaled it down by 0.1. So I'm just going to do it like that, and then now this is just a single plane and I want to extrude out some more geometry to make it thick like it is on this side. And you can see there's all these sorts of tools available to us in the tool shelf as well, but this is such a common operation we can just press E and extrude out. And then let's say we're going to extrude out about 2 units, so I'm just going to press 2 and then press enter to confirm it. So now what we can do is switch to our edge select, and then I'm just going to select this edge on the side and then press Ctrl B, and that's going to perform a bevel operation on that corner there. Now I'm going to tab back into object mode, and then I'm going to try and perform the same kind of bevel on this edge over here. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, select that edge and press Ctrl B, and you can see that the bevel is not at all the same as what it is over here. It should look a lot more uniform in the way that it's beveled when we come back to our object information and set that scaling back to 1. And you can see that it's still is an equal bevel. It's just the object level was still thinking of itself as kind of like a squished down cube, and the mesh data level didn't know how to sort of interpret that as to be anything other than what this form is, what we're looking at here. So the short answer is if we Control Z to undo that bevel, what we can do is go Control A, and that's going to apply our scale. And now you can see that it says X, Y and Z is now all 1 again now, and that means if we tab into edit mode, select that edge and press Ctrl B to bevel it, you can see that that's now going to behave more intuitively in the way that we might have expected it to behave. Simply put, when you want to start trying to model from an edit mesh level, basically make sure that our scaling reads as 1. So first I'm going to just undo a few steps so that we have our cube back. There it is. Another note that I'd like to make is in the outliner up here, you can kind of see a little bit of that relationship shown here in the hierarchy of the way that things are displayed. So if we click on the little plus icon next to the cube, you can see that this is our cube object at the top, and then the cube mesh information is directly below that. And then below that we have a material, for example. And so if we take a look at the plane, again we've got the plane mesh, and then we've got the plane's mesh data. So let's take a look on the mesh data tab again, and then take a look at the pull down, and we can see that we've got this cube and we've got this plane. This kind of illustrates the point again, because we can actually swap these objects over. So instead of it using the cube mesh information, we can tell it to use the plane information. But first I'm just going to scale that right down to say something like this, and then I'm going to just switch over to the plane. And also note that there's a number 2 that's appeared here, because there's now, it recognizes there's 2 things in the scene using the same mesh information. So if we tab into edit mode and then select this top right hand corner vertex and then start trying to move it around, you can see that it's actually moving both of them. It's actually just manipulating this one. It's just that these 2 objects both happen to use the same mesh data. So I'm just going to undo that with Control Z, tab back into object mode, and then switch, say maybe this plane over here to use the cube. And you can notice the cube now says a 0 because there's nothing using that cube anymore. So if we just click on the cube, we can see that now we've told that plane object to use the cube mesh data. And we can just sort of swap those back over quite quickly by just simply selecting them and then reselecting the cube again. We could of course just go Control A and then apply the scale. We could also just reset the scale as well, so by pressing Alt S, and that should reset things. Now take a look in the object menu and you'll see a lot of these kinds of object level operations all listed in this menu. And the ones that we've just been talking about are the apply, which we've got here, the location, rotation and scale, and also the clear. And you can clear the various different options there. Alt S is what we've just cleared. So just to offer a tiny bit more clarification, if we were to slightly rescale this cube down so those values weren't 1 for a second, just clearing the scale with Alt S is exactly the same as just sort of left clicking and dragging on these and then just typing 1 back into the scale value, and then it resizes it back up to what 1 should be. But the opposite of that is the apply in a way. So if we were to scale that back down and then press Control A and apply, it will make the cube at its current size become the new 1 values. So it would just change those all to 1, but it won't actually change the positions of any of the vertices from what we're looking at the moment.